Today, we're unearthing 13 hidden gems of 1960s cinema that deserve the spotlight. Each is a daring, dazzling relic that shaped film history. Get ready to expand your watch list. Your journey into celluloid treasure awaits. The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, 1964. Bright pastels and bittersweet emotions define The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, director Jacques Demy's audacious French musical that trades in dialogue for continuous singing. Starring a radiant Catherine Deneuve and Nino Castelnuovo, the film chronicles a young couple's tender romance tested by war and economic hardship. Demy's stylized production design saturates every frame with color, from the candy-hued wallpaper to the vibrant costumes. The result is a dreamy, sometimes disorienting experience that feels like a living painting in motion. Beneath its cheerful palette lies a story of heartbreak and longing, showing that life rarely follows the neat endings of Hollywood musicals. Produced on a modest budget, The Umbrellas of Cherbourg overcame early skepticism to become a box office success in France, later garnering international acclaim. Its melancholic score by Michel Legrand earned widespread praise and an Oscar nomination, proving that the unusual all-sung format could resonate with audiences worldwide. Demy's meticulous attention to color-coordinated sets inspired future directors, Wes Anderson among others, to explore similarly heightened aesthetics. Over the decades, this film's enduring appeal stems not only from its memorable music and striking visuals, but also from how deeply it captures youthful dreams and the sorrow of lost opportunities. A kaleidoscopic masterpiece indeed. The Haunting, 1963. Robert Wise's The Haunting is a masterclass in psychological terror that dispenses with cheap thrills. Adapted from Shirley Jackson's novel, The Haunting of Hill House, the film centers on four individuals investigating paranormal phenomena in a sprawling, malevolent mansion. Wise employs unsettling camera angles, jarring sound effects, and claustrophobic close-ups to evoke a creeping dread. Rather than relying on gore, The Haunting taps into the characters' fears and insecurities, blurring the line between the supernatural and the psychological. Julie Harris anchors the film with a quietly tormented performance, transforming the haunted house into an eerie extension of her own psyche. Shot in stark black and white, The Haunting cultivates an atmosphere of perpetual unease through whispered voices and ominous banging on walls that remain tantalizingly unseen. Its modest budget of under $1 million was well spent on unnerving set designs, twisted staircases, shadowy corridors, and shifting door panels. Critics applauded the nuanced tension, yet mainstream audiences of the era, expecting more overt shocks, initially overlooked it. Over time, its reputation soared, influencing filmmakers like Steven Spielberg and Martin Scorsese, both naming it among the scariest films ever made. If you crave chills that linger long after the credits, Hill House beckons you inside. Seconds, 1966. Directed by John Frankenheimer, Seconds is an unsettling exploration of identity and regret, wrapped in the sheen of sci-fi horror. Middle-aged banker Arthur Hamilton is offered a radical procedure by a secret organization: fake his death, reconstruct his face, and start anew as Tony Wilson, Rock Hudson. While outwardly rejuvenated, Arthur soon discovers that reinvention brings its own torment. Filmed in stark black and white, Seconds uses fisheye lenses and disorienting camera work to mirror Arthur's psychological unraveling. The result is a feverish tale questioning whether we can ever truly outrun who we are or the choices we've made. Though Rock Hudson was known for lighter fare, his portrayal here is both bold and deeply affecting. Initially overshadowed by his earlier romantic comedies, this turn revealed an actor capable of raw vulnerability. The film's budget hovered around $2.5 million, but it struggled to find audiences upon release, partly due to its bleak tone and lack of easy answers. In time, Seconds gained a dedicated following among cinephiles who praised its haunting imagery and philosophical undertones. Today, it stands as a classic cautionary tale about the cost of chasing illusory perfection, reaffirming that no amount of surgery can cure a wounded conscience. Point Blank, 1967. Point Blank, directed by John Boorman, is a razor-sharp neo-noir film that fused the gritty machismo of 1960s crime thrillers with an avant-garde, almost dreamlike style. Lee Marvin stars as Walker, a betrayed criminal seeking revenge against the underworld syndicate that double-crossed him. What makes this different from typical heist films is Boorman's experimental flair, jump cuts, flashbacks, and a disjointed timeline that blurs reality. As Walker plows through a sterile Los Angeles, framed with stark modernist architecture, his single-minded mission morphs into a haunting existential quest, making Point Blank as much about identity and alienation as it is about payback. Marvin, at the peak of his tough guy persona, infuses Walker with a relentless intensity. On a budget of $2 million, Boorman used precise editing and a mesmerizing color palette that juxtaposed bright Californian landscapes with murky nighttime interiors. The film struggled domestically, overshadowed by flashier studio releases, yet critics soon recognized its daring narrative structure. International audiences praised its jarring style, a precursor to 1970s experimentation in American cinema. Even Steven Soderbergh cited Point Blank as an influence, celebrating its moody ambiance and minimalist dialogue. If you crave a stylish, psychological punch in your crime thriller, this is your bullet train, The Swimmer, 1968. Adapted from John Cheever's short story, The Swimmer is a surreal odyssey through suburban malaise. Burt Lancaster stars as Ned Merrill, a seemingly confident man who appears poolside in an upscale Connecticut neighborhood. He declares he'll swim his way home via the pools of his friends and acquaintances, each stop becoming a confrontation with his past. Frank Perry's direction mirrors Ned's unraveling mind. What begins as a whimsical exercise in pool hopping soon spirals into something darker, exposing illusions of American prosperity. Lancaster's magnetic performance shifts from vibrant to desperate, letting the viewer witness a slow, painful stripping away of one man's facade. Production ran into obstacles, including creative clashes that led to Sidney Pollack stepping in to reshoot some scenes, uncredited. The film had a mid-range budget that ballooned due to these changes, ultimately failing to lure wide audiences. Critics were split. Some found it a hypnotic moral fable. Others dismissed it as pretentious. Over time, The Swimmer developed cult status among fans drawn to its dreamlike quality and pointed critique of suburban pretension. Equal parts psychological drama and existential puzzle, it remains an unorthodox portrayal of a man's quest for redemption. The Innocence, 1961. Enveloped in ghostly tension, The Innocence adapts Henry James's The Turn of the Screw with uncanny precision. Deborah Kerr plays Miss Giddens, a governess charged with caring for 2 orphans in a remote English estate. Strange apparitions appear, and the children's behavior veers between angelic and unsettling, leaving viewers wondering if supernatural forces or Miss Giddens' psyche is truly at play. Director Jack Clayton uses deep-focus cinematography to frame each corridor, candlelit room, and statue-laden garden as an ominous realm where the slightest shift of shadow conjures dread. As the film progresses, ambiguity coils tighter, fueling a singularly eerie mood. Shot in luminous black and white cinemascope, The Innocence relies on insinuation rather than overt horror. Kerr delivers a layered performance, flitting between maternal warmth and rattled suspicion. With a budget near $1 million, the production prioritized lavish sets that still feel claustrophobic, from echoing hallways to moonlit lakes. Although not a blockbuster upon release, critics praised its literary fidelity and psychological complexity. Over time, it influenced modern psychological thrillers, proving that sometimes the most potent scares come from unexplained shapes in the corner of the frame. For admirers of slow-burn chills that probe deeply into the mind, The Innocence remains a beacon. Yestor, the Collector, 1965. William Wyler's Tu Porcia the Collector lures viewers into a quiet yet harrowing scenario. Terence Stamp embodies Freddie Clegg, a reclusive butterfly collector who kidnaps art student Miranda, Samantha Egger, intending to keep her like one of his prized specimens. Unlike typical hostage thrillers, The Collector is a simmering psychological duel. The tension arises from the eerie calm in Freddie's eyes and Miranda's desperate attempts to manipulate, plead, or outwit her captor. Wyler, famed for epics like Ben-Hur, narrows his focus here to a claustrophobic setting, a converted cellar, where the line between victim and captor warps in an unsettling ballet of power and fear. Despite its disturbing premise, the film remains curiously intimate, driven by the battle of wills between Stamp and Egger. With a moderate budget close to $1 million, Wyler invested in subtle set design, ensuring that every shadow, locked door, and decorative detail reflects Freddy's warped sense of order. Although overshadowed by flashier 1960s releases, The Collector garnered critical praise, winning Egger the Best Actress award at Cannes. Over the years, it's become a template for psychological thrillers that emphasize conversation and emotional cat and mouse over gore. Provocative and deeply uncomfortable, this film is a stark reminder that evil can wear polite faces. Black Sabbath, 1963, horror anthology. Black Sabbath, originally I Travolti della Paura, stands as a jewel in Italian maestro Mario Bava's filmography. Divided into 3 segments, the telephone, the wordulac, and the drop of water, the film showcases Bava's flair for atmospheric dread. In each tale, vibrant technicolor lighting bathes the sets in a macabre glow, accentuating every sinister shadow. Black Sabbath also features the iconic Boris Karloff, whose menacing narration links the stories together, adding a sense of continuity to the otherwise distinct vignettes. Bava's hallmark style, eerie, opulent, and drenched in color, turns simple sets into surreal landscapes of horror and foreboding. Shot on a modest budget, Black Sabbath capitalized on Bava's ingenuity. Skillful camera tricks and creative lighting concealed any financial constraints. Upon release, different cuts circulated internationally, with American distributors altering story order and toning down suggestive material. The film's anthology format proved both a marketing boon and a challenge, appealing to fans of short-form horror, yet puzzling some mainstream audiences. Over time, critics lauded it for its gorgeously stylized visuals, and for bridging classic Gothic elements with the modern gore that would soon define Italian horror. If you seek an unsettling journey tinted by lush color and timeless suspense, this is a must-watch. The Exterminating Angel, 1962. Luis Buñuel's The Exterminating Angel orchestrates a peculiar nightmare inside an opulent mansion. After a formal dinner, the high society guests realize they cannot leave the drawing room. No locked doors, no guards, just an invisible force binding them there. As hunger, thirst, and claustrophobia set in, decorum disintegrates, revealing primal desperation beneath genteel facades. Buñuel's surrealist flair is on full display, from inexplicable repetitions of scenes to bizarre dreamlike interludes. Subtle jabs at class structures thread through the film, mocking the pretensions of the elite who, despite their wealth and sophistication, crumble when forced outside their comfort zone. Produced on a tight budget in Mexico, the film used minimal sets, predominantly one lavish room, and emphasized psychological breakdown over special effects. Critics initially found its premise baffling, though it resonated powerfully with those familiar with Buñuel's surreal sensibilities. Censors in Spain and several other countries took issue with its anti-establishment tone, limiting its immediate commercial success. Over time, The Exterminating Angel gained critical esteem as an exemplar of the absurd in cinema, influencing directors from David Lynch to Yorgos Lanthimos. Wryly humorous and deeply disquieting, it forces viewers to ask, when our social masks slip away, what remains? Daisies, 1966. Vera Chytilova's Daisies is a Czech new wave triumph, bursting with frenetic energy and rebellious spirit. The film follows 2 young women, both named Marie, who embark on a series of playful, anarchic pranks. Eschewing conventional storytelling, Chytilova saturates the screen with kaleidoscopic colors, radical jump cuts, and erratic shifts in tone. Beneath the whimsical veneer lies a sly critique of consumerism and female objectification, making Daisies an experiment in form and a subversive feminist statement. Its short runtime brims with irreverence, from collage-like food fights to surreal tableaus that challenge conventional notions of etiquette and narrative coherence. Filmed under a communist regime that prized conformity, Daisies tested the limits of artistic freedom, Its budget was modest, but Chytilova's inventive approach stretched every koruna, leaning into avant-garde editing over costly sets. Although the film faced government bans for food wastage, symbolizing disrespect, it later became a hallmark of the Czech New Wave's boundary-pushing style. International festivals eventually recognized its brazen artistry, elevating Chytilova's status as a pioneering female director. Even now, Daisies feels ahead of its time, delighting viewers with its irreverent tone while championing social commentary. It's an essential watch for anyone hungry for fearless, unconventional cinema. Mid-script reflection. What is it about 1960s cinema that continues to captivate us? At first glance, the decade seems to stand on the cusp of old Hollywood glam and a new wave of experimentation. Studios grappled with changing audience tastes, and directors started flexing their creative muscles in unprecedented ways. While big-budget epics and box-office behemoths dominated headlines, think The Sound of Music or Lawrence of Arabia, the 60s were also a breeding ground for riskier, more intimate projects that defied mainstream expectations. The emergence of European new waves, French, Czech, British, injected global cinema with fresh voices and styles, challenging the polished formulas that had prevailed since the Golden Age. Meanwhile, stateside boundary-pushing directors were tinkering with form, subject matter, and narrative devices. This tension between tradition and rebellion gave birth to a whirlwind of lesser-known treasures now recognized as hidden gems, vital stepping stones for the decades of cinema that followed. Film scholars often point to the loosening of censorship codes in the 60s as a catalyst for creative experimentation. As the strict production code in the United States began to lose its grip, filmmakers dared to depict more complex themes: psychological horror, social unrest, sexual liberation. Across the Atlantic, European auteurs, unencumbered by Hollywood's commercial constraints, delved into uncharted territory: existential dread, taboo relationships, and biting social satire. The result? An incredibly rich tapestry of cinematic expression that occasionally got lost beneath the cultural juggernauts of the time. It's these marginal masterpieces, like the chilling ambiguity of the Innocence or the vibrant subversion of Daisies, that reveal the decade's true depth. When we dig into them, we see direct lines influencing later movements: the tonal grit of 70s New Hollywood, the art house bravado of the 80s, and the postmodern self-awareness of the 90s and beyond. Yet, hidden gems aren't hidden due to inferior quality. Often they fall through the cracks of distribution deals, cultural tastes, or marketing budgets. A film like Seconds, for instance, was overshadowed by its genre-defying premise and Rock Hudson's shift from romantic idol to tortured protagonist. Point Blank and The Haunting similarly broke molds but didn't align with easy promotional angles. It's only in retrospect, thanks to film historians, dedicated fans, and critical reevaluations, that these works are lauded as crucial turning points. They stretch the limits of visual storytelling, tackled neglected social issues, or simply offered audacious cinematic experiences far removed from mainstream formulas. For those willing to venture off the beaten path, these films serve as vivid reminders that the soul of cinema often lies where commercial interests dare not tread, capturing raw honesty or experimental brilliance that broad appeal blockbusters might dilute. Technological changes also left an imprint on 1960s filmmaking. While color became more pervasive, certain directors deliberately clung to black and white for aesthetic or thematic reasons, as seen in The Innocence. Budgetary constraints led to innovative problem-solving. Mario Bava used bold lighting techniques in Black Sabbath to amplify dread without expensive sets. European directors from Czechoslovakia, Italy, and France found ways to evoke emotion through handheld cinematography and elliptical editing, turning constraints into stylistic hallmarks. Even small details, like employing minimalist scores or natural lighting, lent these films an authenticity that transcended the era's typical glamour. Such innovations paved the way for the gritty realism that would define the American New Hollywood movement, when directors like Martin Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola cited European influences in forging their own groundbreaking works. In many ways, these lesser-celebrated 60s films were the signposts pointing towards cinema's more daring future. Another reason these gems remain essential is their ability to speak across generations. Their narratives, love, isolation, political unrest, and existential questioning, remain evergreen topics. Even in a time saturated by CGI blockbusters, the emotional pull of a psychologically tense chamber piece like The Collector retains power. The haunting moral questions in The Swimmer, about the illusions we construct for ourselves, resonate in today's world, where personal branding on social media can mask deep insecurities. Observing how the 60s tackled such universal themes under restrictive codes or budgets reminds us that cinematic artistry isn't merely about grand spectacle, but about incisive human insight. These films remind audiences that technology alone doesn't define quality. Vision, creativity, and bravery do. Watching them is a window into a transformative era that still shapes how stories are told, retold, and reimagined on screen. So, as you navigate these hidden gems, take time to appreciate how each director harnessed the turbulent energy of the 60s to tell stories both intimate and expansive. Notice how The Umbrellas of Cherbourg transforms heartbreak into a colorful operetta that defies realism, or how Daisies uses absurd antics to critique social norms. Look for recurring threads, directors challenging complacency, actors taking daring roles, and production teams pushing against financial or ideological limits. These bold forays are precisely why many of these films have endured, because they speak to a restless creative spirit that has kept cinema evolving. Now that we've dissected 10 remarkable hidden gems, we'll take a brief detour to honor 3 more lesser-known titles. Each one adds another layer to the tapestry of 1960s innovation. Keep your eyes peeled because the decade's cinematic vault is brimming with extraordinary wonders waiting to be discovered. 3 bonus gems. Bonus gem 1. Wings, 1966. Larissa Shepitko. Larissa Shepitko's Wings portrays the quiet turmoil of a retired World War II pilot turned high school principal. Haunted by memories of flight and lost camaraderie, she navigates post-war Soviet life in a haze of unspoken longing. Eschewing grandiose war scenes, the film zeroes in on subdued emotional textures. With nuanced cinematography capturing the gray Soviet landscapes, Wings stands out as a rare female-directed feature in 60s Soviet cinema. Its modest release and restricted international circulation left it in relative obscurity. Over time, it has gained critical praise for its delicate portrayal of regret and the search for renewed purpose. Bonus gem 2. Woman in the Dunes, 1964. Hiroshi Teshigahara. Japanese avant-garde filmmaker Hiroshi Teshigahara delivers a hypnotic descent into sand-filled despair with Woman in the Dunes. A teacher becomes trapped in a desert pit with a mysterious woman forced to shovel sand to survive. Stark black and white photography emphasizes the shifting grains, turning the landscape into a living, suffocating entity. Despite winning the Special Jury Prize at Cannes, the film remained under-recognized by mainstream Western audiences. Its existential themes and striking visuals have since elevated it to cult status. Teshigahara's minimalist approach showcases how even the simplest settings can become arenas for profound philosophical reflection. Bonus gem 3. Pale Flower, 1964. Masahiro Shinoda. In Shinoda's noir-inflected Pale Flower, a recently paroled Yakuza drifts through Tokyo's neon underbelly, crossing paths with an enigmatic gambler enthralled by danger. Their encounters, full of unspoken tension, illustrate an addiction to risk as they frequent underground casinos. Visually, the film melds jazz-scored intensity with stark black and white cinematography, capturing a post-war Japan teetering between tradition and modernity. Though it found domestic success among art house circles, international distribution lagged. Only years later did critics hail Pale Flower as a masterpiece of minimalist noir, lauding its subtle performances and Shinoda's dynamic editing that underscores the character's existential flirtation with death. With these 13 hidden gems uncovered, you've glimpsed the daring spirit of 60s cinema beyond Hollywood's biggest hits. Let's keep the reels spinning. Subscribe to Golden Age Classics for more journeys into overlooked classics. Share your favorites below, and together, we'll keep these cinematic treasures alive for future generations.